The billionaire cries at his daughter's grave, not knowing she's alive and watching him. The autumn wind swept through Rosewood Cemetery, carrying with it the scent of dying leaves and distant rain. Marcus Wellington stood alone before a small white marble gravestone, his $5,000 suit now wrinkled and stained with tears. His hands trembled as they traced the golden letters, Emma Rose Wellington, beloved daughter, age 9. Gone too soon, forever in our hearts. 3 months. It had been 3 months since the yacht explosion that supposedly took his daughter's life. 3 months since his world shattered into a million pieces that could never be put back together. The 40-year-old billionaire, once feared in boardrooms across America, now looked like a broken shell of a man. His face was gaunt, dark circles carved deep beneath his eyes, and his salt and pepper hair had turned almost completely white from the grief. "Emma, baby girl," Marcus whispered, his voice cracking like fragile glass. "Daddy brought you your favorite chocolate chip cookies today. The ones from that little bakery on 5th Street, remember? You always said they tasted like heaven." His hands shook as he placed the small pink box beside the gravestone. "I still can't believe you're gone. I can't. I can't breathe without you, sweetheart." The tears came harder now, rolling down his weathered cheeks in endless streams. Marcus fell to his knees, his expensive shoes sinking into the soft earth. His entire body shook with sobs that seemed to come from the very depths of his soul. "I'd give everything, every dollar, every company, every property, just to hear your laugh one more time. Just to feel your little arms around my neck. Just to hear you call me Daddy again." But what Marcus didn't know, what he couldn't possibly imagine, was that his daughter was alive. And she was watching him right now. Behind a large oak tree, barely 30 feet away, 9-year-old Emma Wellington stood frozen, her small hand clamped over her mouth to muffle her sobs. Her once bright blue eyes, now filled with tears and terror, watched her father's breakdown with a pain no child should ever experience. Her blonde hair, once long and styled in perfect curls, was now cut short and dyed dark brown. Her pink dresses had been replaced with worn jeans and a dirty hoodie. She looked nothing like the little princess who smiled from magazine covers and charity event photos. Emma's heart felt like it was being ripped apart as she watched her father fall to pieces. Every fiber of her being screamed to run to him, to throw her arms around him and tell him she was alive. But she couldn't. She couldn't move. Because the woman who had kidnapped her, the woman she'd once called Aunt Victoria, had made one thing perfectly clear: if you ever try to escape, if you ever tell anyone you're alive, I'll make sure your father dies a slow, painful death. And it will be all your fault. Emma bit down on her hand hard enough to draw blood, trying to contain the scream building in her chest. She'd been held captive in a basement across town for 3 months, fed just enough to survive, kept in darkness and fear. But 2 hours ago, she'd finally found a moment when her captor left the door unlocked. She'd run faster than she'd ever run in her life, straight to the cemetery because she knew, somehow she just knew, that her father would be there today. And seeing him like this, seeing the strongest man she'd ever known completely destroyed, it was worse than any nightmare she'd lived through in that basement. Marcus pulled a small velvet box from his pocket with shaking hands. Inside was a delicate gold bracelet he'd bought for Emma's 10th birthday, a birthday she would never reach, or so he thought. "I got this made for you, princess. See? It has our initials intertwined, M and E, forever connected, just like I promised. Remember? I told you nothing could ever separate us." His voice broke completely. "But I failed you, baby girl. I was supposed to protect you. I'm your father, and I couldn't save you from that explosion. I should have been there. I should have checked the yacht myself. I should have." His words dissolved into raw, agonizing sobs that echoed through the empty cemetery. Emma's knees buckled. She slid down the tree trunk, her entire body shaking. Tears streamed down her face in rivers. Her father thought he'd failed her. He blamed himself. The guilt and pain in his voice was like a knife twisting in her heart. "I visit you every day, Emma," Marcus continued, talking to the gravestone as if his daughter could hear him. "Every single day. I can't work anymore. I can't sleep. I can't eat. Nothing matters without you. Your Aunt Victoria keeps telling me I need to move on, that you'd want me to live my life, but how can I? You were my life. You were everything." At the mention of Victoria's name, Emma's blood ran cold. Victoria Wellington, Marcus's younger sister, his trusted confidant, the woman who'd helped raise Emma after her mother died in childbirth. The same woman who'd orchestrated the entire kidnapping, who'd faked Emma's death, who'd kept her locked in a basement for 3 months while pretending to comfort Marcus through his grief. Emma's hands curled into fists. She finally understood the full scope of Victoria's evil plan. The fake yacht explosion. The staged death. The public funeral where Victoria had cried crocodile tears while Emma watched from a TV screen in her prison, unable to scream, unable to reveal the truth. But why? Why would Victoria do this? What could she possibly gain from destroying her own brother and kidnapping her niece? Marcus stood slowly, his legs unsteady. He kissed his fingers and pressed them against Emma's name on the gravestone. "I love you, baby girl. Daddy will be back tomorrow. I'll always come back." As he turned to walk away, Emma made a decision. She couldn't reveal herself yet, not until she understood Victoria's plan, not until she could ensure her father's safety. But she wouldn't stay hidden forever. She would find the truth. She would expose Victoria. And she would get back to her father. No matter what it took. Before we continue with this emotional journey, I want to hear from you. Which city are you watching this story from? What time is it where you are right now? Comment below and let me know, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you never miss a story that will touch your heart. Now, let's dive deeper into Emma's nightmare. Emma knew she had to get back to the basement before Victoria noticed she was gone. Her heart pounded against her ribcage as she ran through the back alleys of downtown Seattle, keeping her hood pulled low over her face. The early evening shadows helped conceal her as she retraced the path she'd memorized during her escape. The house looked ordinary from the outside, a modest 2-story building in a quiet neighborhood, nothing like Victoria's actual penthouse apartment in the luxury district. This was her secret property, the one nobody knew about. The one where she kept her brother's daughter locked away like a dirty secret. Emma slipped through the basement window she'd left slightly open and climbed back down into her prison. The smell of mold and dampness hit her immediately. The single light bulb hanging from the ceiling cast eerie shadows on the concrete walls. Her bed was a thin mattress on the floor, covered with a stained blanket. A small bathroom with a broken toilet stood in the corner. This had been her entire world for 3 months. But now, something was different. Emma had seen her father. She'd witnessed his pain. And more importantly, she'd heard him mention Victoria's name with trust and love, completely unaware that his own sister was the monster destroying his life. Emma's mind raced. She needed to understand Victoria's motive. Money? It had to be money. Marcus Wellington was worth billions, and Victoria had always lived lavishly off her brother's generosity. But why would she need to fake Emma's death to get more money? Unless... The sound of footsteps on the stairs above made Emma's blood freeze. Victoria was coming. Emma quickly positioned herself on the mattress, pretending to be asleep. She heard the lock click, the door creak open, and heels clicking down the wooden stairs. "Still sleeping, little princess?" Victoria's voice was cold, completely different from the warm, loving tone she used around Marcus. "You've been sleeping a lot today. Must be boring down here all alone." Emma kept her eyes closed, her breathing steady. She'd learned that the less she interacted with Victoria, the fewer beatings she received. Victoria's footsteps moved closer. Emma could smell her expensive perfume, the same perfume she wore to Emma's fake funeral. "You know, your father is completely falling apart," Victoria said casually, as if discussing the weather. "He can barely function anymore. He's stopped going to the office, stopped taking meetings. The board is getting worried." Emma's fingernails dug into her palms, but she remained still. "Do you know what happens when a CEO becomes incompetent?" Victoria continued, her voice taking on a sharp edge. "The board can vote to remove him. And guess who's been carefully cultivating relationships with every single board member for the past 5 years? Guess who's been positioning herself as the logical successor to Wellington Enterprises?" Emma's eyes flew open despite herself. She couldn't help it. Victoria smiled, a predatory smile that made Emma's skin crawl. "Oh, you're awake. Good. I want you to understand exactly what's happening here, little girl. Your father is going to sign over power of attorney to me any day now. He's so broken, so destroyed, that he can't make decisions anymore. He needs his loving sister to take care of everything for him." "You're evil," Emma whispered, her voice hoarse from disuse and crying. Victoria laughed, a cold, brittle sound. "I'm practical. Your grandfather built Wellington Enterprises from nothing, and he left it all to Marcus just because he was born first. Just because he was a boy. I worked just as hard, but I got nothing. Just a trust fund and the title of supportive sister." Her voice dripped with venom. "Well, not anymore. With Marcus incompetent and you dead, I'll control everything. The company, the fortune, the power, all of it will be mine. My dad will never sign anything over to you," Emma said, trying to sound brave even though she was terrified. "Oh, sweetheart, he already has." Victoria pulled out her phone and showed Emma a document. "See this? It's a power of attorney agreement, signed just last week. Your dear father was so grief-stricken, so desperate for comfort, that he signed it without even reading it carefully. He thinks it's just temporary, just until he gets better. But he's never going to get better, Emma. Because I'm going to make sure of it." Emma's blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" Victoria's smile widened. "I've been slowly poisoning him. Nothing dramatic, just small doses of certain medications mixed into his food. Enough to keep him depressed, confused, unable to think clearly. The doctors think it's just severe grief, but it's so much more than that. In a few more months, I'll have him declared mentally incompetent. And then, everything will be legally mine." Tears streamed down Emma's face. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because there's nothing you can do about it," Victoria said simply. "You're dead, remember? And even if you somehow escaped and told everyone you're alive, who would believe you? A traumatized 9-year-old girl with a fantastical story about her aunt? Please. I've covered every track. The yacht explosion was ruled an accident. Your DNA was found at the scene, or at least, DNA that matched yours. I paid very good money to make sure every detail was perfect. Where did you get DNA that matched mine?" Emma whispered. "Your baby teeth," Victoria replied casually. "Your father kept them all in a little box in his study. Sentimental fool. I took them months before the accident, ground them up, and had them planted at the explosion site. The forensics team never suspected a thing." Emma felt sick. Victoria had been planning this for months, maybe even years. Every detail had been carefully orchestrated. "Now," Victoria said, pulling a bottle of water and a sandwich from her bag, "eat this. I need you alive, at least for now. You're my insurance policy. If anything ever goes wrong, if Marcus ever starts to recover or get suspicious, I can produce you and claim I found you after all this time. I'll be the hero who saved his daughter, and he'll be even more grateful, even more dependent on me." She dropped the food on the floor and turned to leave. "He'll find out," Emma said quietly. "Somehow, he'll find out the truth." Victoria paused at the stairs and looked back with a pitying expression. Your father is a broken man, Emma. He can barely remember to shower. He certainly won't figure this out. Now eat your dinner and get some rest. Tomorrow's another day of your father's suffering, and I have board meetings to attend. The door slammed shut. The lock clicked. And Emma was alone again in the darkness. But something had changed. Victoria had made a mistake. She'd told Emma everything. She'd revealed her entire plan because she thought a 9-year-old girl was powerless. But Emma wasn't powerless. She was Marcus Wellington's daughter. And she had her father's intelligence, his determination, and his strength. She would find a way out. She would save her father. And she would make Victoria pay for every tear, every sleepless night, every moment of suffering she'd caused. Emma stood up, her legs shaky but determined. She walked to the small bathroom and looked at herself in the cracked mirror. Her face was thin, her eyes haunted, but they burned with new purpose. Hold on, Daddy, she whispered. I'm coming home. I promise. Days turned into weeks, and Emma began to methodically observe everything about her prison and her captor. She noticed that Victoria came at the same times each day, 8 a.m. and 6 p.m., like clockwork. She noticed that Victoria always locked her phone with a fingerprint, but she'd also seen her use a backup PIN code once when her hands were wet, 0512. May 12, Victoria's birthday. Emma also discovered something crucial. The basement had an old ventilation duct that connected to the main house above. When Victoria had her phone calls upstairs, if the house was quiet enough, Emma could hear every word through the vent. That's how Emma learned about Robert Chen. Robert, darling, you worry too much, Victoria's voice drifted down through the vent one evening. Emma pressed her ear against the metal grate, straining to hear every word. Marcus signed the documents. Everything is proceeding exactly as planned. I don't like this, Victoria. The man's voice sounded uncomfortable, hesitant. He's your brother. And that little girl. That little girl is fine, Victoria snapped. She's fed, she's sheltered, and when the time is right, I'll figure out what to do with her. But right now, we're on the verge of controlling a $15 billion empire. Don't get cold feet on me now. I'm not getting cold feet, I'm getting a conscience, Robert replied, his voice firmer. I agreed to help you manipulate the board votes, to help you position yourself for the CEO role. I didn't sign up for kidnapping and poisoning. There was a long silence. Then Victoria's voice turned silky, dangerous. Robert, darling, you're already in too deep. You helped me fake the yacht explosion. You helped me obtain the DNA evidence. You helped me forge several documents. If I go down, you go down with me. So I suggest you stay focused on our goal and stop developing morals at this inconvenient time. Emma heard footsteps, then a door slam. She sat back against the wall, her mind racing. Robert Chen, she knew that name. He was Victoria's boyfriend, a tech entrepreneur who'd made millions in Silicon Valley. Emma had met him a few times at family gatherings. He'd always seemed kind, had given her expensive gifts, had joked around with her father. But he was part of this. He'd helped Victoria fake Emma's death. Except, he sounded like he was having second thoughts. Emma's 9-year-old mind worked through the possibilities. If Robert was feeling guilty, if he was starting to crack, maybe he could be her way out. Maybe she could turn him against Victoria. But how? She was locked in a basement with no way to contact him directly. Then Emma remembered something. At one of the family dinners, Robert had mentioned he was an early morning jogger. He ran through Seattle's Volunteer Park every morning at 6 a.m., without fail. It's my meditation time, he'd said. The only hour of the day when I'm not checking my phone. A plan began to form in Emma's mind. The next morning, Emma waited until Victoria made her 8 a.m. visit, dropped off breakfast, and left. Then she went to work. Using a bobby pin she'd found wedged in the floorboards weeks ago, Emma began working on the basement window lock. She'd been practicing for days, and finally, after an hour of patient work, she heard the click. Emma pushed the window open and climbed out. She had exactly 10 hours before Victoria's evening visit. 10 hours to find Robert Chen, convince him to help her, and get back before Victoria noticed she was gone. She ran through the Seattle streets, her lungs burning, her legs aching. Volunteer Park was 3 miles away. By the time she reached it, the sun was fully up, and early morning joggers were beginning to fill the paths. Emma found a bench near the main jogging trail and waited, her eyes scanning every face. She'd tucked her dyed hair under a baseball cap and kept her hood up, looking like any other street kid taking refuge in the park. And then she saw him. Robert Chen, in his expensive running gear, earbuds in, jogging at a steady pace. Emma's heart hammered. This was her only chance. She stepped directly into his path. Robert nearly collided with her, stumbling to a stop. "Hey, watch where you're," his words died as he got a good look at her face. Even with the dyed hair, even with the weight loss and the shadows under her eyes, recognition dawned in his expression. "Oh my God. Emma?" Emma grabbed his arm. "Please," she whispered urgently. "Please help me. I know you're involved with Victoria, but I heard you. You said you have a conscience. Please, I'm begging you." Robert looked around frantically, as if expecting Victoria to appear. His face had gone pale. "Emma, you're supposed to be dead? I know. But I'm not. Victoria kidnapped me. She faked my death. And she's poisoning my father." Emma's words tumbled out in a rush. "She told me everything. She wants the company. She wants the money. And she's destroying my dad to get it." Robert's hands were shaking. He pulled out his earbuds, his breath coming fast. I didn't know about the poisoning. Victoria said you were just being kept temporarily until the power transfer was complete, then she'd return you and claim she'd found you. She said no one would get hurt. My father is hurting." Emma's voice cracked. "I saw him at the cemetery. He's dying inside. And if Victoria's actually poisoning him..." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "Please, Mr. Chen. You're a good person. I remember you. You taught me how to play chess. You laughed at my jokes. You're not like her. Please don't let my father die." Robert ran his hands through his hair, a man clearly at war with himself. "If I help you, Victoria will destroy me. She has evidence of everything I've done. I'll go to prison. If you don't help me, my father will die, and you'll have to live with that for the rest of your life," Emma said quietly. "Which is worse, Mr. Chen? Prison, or knowing you let an innocent man die?" The silence stretched between them. Emma could see the internal battle playing across Robert's face, fear warring with guilt, self-preservation fighting against conscience. Finally, Robert knelt down to Emma's eye level. "Okay," he whispered. "Okay. I'll help you. But we have to be smart about this. If Victoria suspects anything, she'll disappear, and she'll destroy all the evidence. We need to catch her red-handed." Hope bloomed in Emma's chest for the first time in months. "I need to get proof. Recordings, documents, something concrete." Robert nodded slowly. "Victoria keeps files on everything, it's how she's been blackmailing me. She has a safe in her penthouse apartment. I know the code. She made me memorize it in case of emergencies." He pulled out his phone. "I'm going to give you my number. Get access to a phone somehow, call me, and we'll coordinate. But Emma, you have to go back to that basement. If Victoria finds you missing." "I know," Emma said. "I'm going back now. But Mr. Chen?" Thank you. Thank you for choosing to do the right thing. Robert's eyes were filled with tears and shame. I should have done it months ago. I'm so sorry, Emma. I'm so sorry for what I've helped do to you and your father. Emma squeezed his hand once, then turned and ran back through the park, back through the streets, back to her prison. But this time, she ran with hope in her heart. She had an ally. Now she just needed evidence. Emma made it back to the basement with 2 hours to spare before Victoria's evening visit. Her body ached from the running, her feet had blisters, but her mind was sharper than it had been in months. She had a plan now. She had hope. But she needed evidence. And she needed it fast. That night, Emma lay awake listening through the ventilation duct. Victoria was on the phone again, this time with someone from the Wellington Enterprises Board of Directors. Yes, Marcus is still struggling terribly, Victoria's concerned voice floated down. I'm worried about him, honestly. He's barely eating, barely sleeping. Just yesterday, I found him wandering around the house at 3 a.m., completely disoriented. I think the grief may be causing some cognitive issues. Emma's fists clenched. The disorientation wasn't from grief, it was from the poison Victoria was feeding him. I understand the board's concerns, Victoria continued. Yes, I agree that we need to think about the company's future. I'll bring it up with Marcus gently. Perhaps a temporary medical leave. Yes, with me overseeing operations in the interim. Of course. Thank you for your support, Gerald. The call ended, and Emma heard Victoria's footsteps moving around upstairs. This was it. This was Victoria's endgame taking shape. If the board declared Marcus medically unfit, Victoria would take control. And Emma's father would lose everything he'd built. Emma knew she needed to move faster. The next morning, when Victoria came for her daily visit, Emma pretended to be sick. What's wrong with you? Victoria asked impatiently, looking at Emma curled up on the mattress. My stomach, Emma moaned, making her voice weak. I think the sandwich you brought yesterday was bad. I've been throwing up all night. Victoria's expression flickered with annoyance. She was a germaphobe, Emma had remembered that detail. Fine. I'll bring you something bland tonight. Crackers and water. Don't make a mess down here. As soon as Victoria left, Emma sprang into action. She'd noticed something during Victoria's visits. Victoria always carried her designer purse, and she often set it down on the stairs while she talked. If Emma could time it perfectly, maybe she could get to that purse, get Victoria's phone, and photograph the evidence on it before Victoria noticed. It was risky. It was dangerous. But Emma was out of options. That evening, when Victoria came down with crackers and bottled water, Emma put her plan into motion. Aunt Victoria, Emma said weakly, I think I need to throw up again. Can you help me to the bathroom? Victoria's face twisted with disgust. You're 9 years old. You can walk yourself to the bathroom. Please, Emma whimpered. I'm so dizzy. What if I fall? Victoria sighed dramatically and set her purse down on the 3rd step from the bottom, exactly where Emma had hoped. Fine. Come on. Emma made a show of stumbling, of being weak, as Victoria reluctantly supported her to the bathroom. I'll be right here, Victoria said, standing outside the bathroom door, clearly not wanting to witness any actual illness. Emma closed the bathroom door and immediately turned on the faucet to cover any noise. She had maybe 2 minutes, if she was lucky. She crept to the bathroom's small window, a window too small for her to escape through, but large enough to see the stairs. Victoria was checking her watch, tapping her foot impatiently. I'm sorry, Emma called out. It's really bad. Just hurry up, Victoria snapped. Emma flushed the toilet for effect, then made retching sounds. While Victoria was distracted by her disgust, Emma did something she'd been practicing for weeks, something her gymnastics teacher had taught her before all this nightmare began. She was small and flexible. The ventilation duct she'd been listening through had an opening in the bathroom, an opening just barely large enough for a 9-year-old girl. Emma climbed onto the toilet, pushed open the vent cover she'd already loosened over the past weeks, and squeezed herself into the duct. The metal was cold and tight, and she had to move like a worm, but she'd measured it out. It led directly above the stairs. She could see Victoria's purse below her through the vent grate. Emma's heart pounded so hard she thought it would give her away. Carefully, silently, she removed the vent grate and reached down. Her arm was just barely long enough. Her fingers stretched. Got it. She pulled the purse up into the duct and immediately opened it with shaking hands. Victoria's phone was right on top. Emma pressed the home button. The phone wanted a fingerprint or PIN. Emma entered 0512. The phone unlocked. Emma's hands were shaking so badly she could barely navigate, but she'd watched her father use his phone 1,000 times. She knew exactly what to do. She opened Victoria's messages, her email, her files. And what she found made her blood run cold. There were emails to Robert Chen discussing the accident. There were text messages to someone named Dr. Phillips asking about medications that would mimic depression without being detectable in standard blood work. There were photos of documents, forged documents, showing Marcus's signature on agreements he'd never actually signed. There were voice memos of Victoria practicing how to sound concerned and loving when discussing Marcus's condition with the board. And most damning of all, there was a video file labeled insurance. Emma opened it. The video showed Victoria in what looked like a medical facility, speaking with a man in a white coat. "And you're absolutely certain the DNA will match?" Victoria's voice asked. "Perfect match," the man replied. "We used the samples you provided, the baby teeth. Ground them down, mixed them with organic material. When the forensics team tests the remains from the yacht explosion, they'll confirm it's your niece's DNA. No one will question it." "And the body?" Victoria asked. "Already cremated. A Jane Doe from the county morgue. No one will miss her. We'll place the ashes at the scene. It'll look like the explosion was so intense that only DNA evidence remained." Emma's stomach turned. Victoria had used a real person's body. Someone who died unknown and alone, used as a prop in Victoria's sick scheme. But this video, this was everything Emma needed. This was proof. Emma quickly accessed her own email account on Victoria's phone, an account Victoria didn't know Emma had the password to. She forwarded every damning email, every photo, and the video file to herself and to Robert Chen's email address. Then she deleted the sent messages from Victoria's phone so there'd be no trace. "Emma." Victoria's voice was sharp. "What's taking so long?" Emma's heart nearly stopped. She shoved the phone back into the purse and lowered it through the vent, dangling it by the straps. She let go, and the purse dropped back onto the step with a soft thud. "Coming," Emma called out, flushing the toilet again. She squeezed herself back through the vent, replaced the cover, and climbed down from the toilet. She opened the bathroom door, her face genuinely pale from the adrenaline. Victoria looked her over with suspicion. "You look terrible." "I feel terrible," Emma said honestly. Victoria picked up her purse from the step, not noticing anything amiss. "Go to bed. I'll check on you tomorrow." As soon as Victoria left and locked the door, Emma collapsed on her mattress, her entire body shaking. But for the first time in 3 months, she smiled. She had the evidence. Now she just needed to get it to someone who could help. Emma pulled out a small piece of paper she'd been hiding, Robert Chen's phone number, which he'd written down for her in the park. She'd memorized it and destroyed the original paper, but she'd rewritten it to make sure she wouldn't forget. Tomorrow, somehow, she would find a way to call him. Tomorrow, she would start the process of taking her father back from the monster who'd stolen him. Tomorrow, the truth would begin to surface. Emma knew she couldn't wait any longer. The evidence was sent, but she needed to act before Victoria made her next move. That night, through the ventilation duct, Emma heard something that made her blood run cold. "It's time," Victoria was saying on the phone. "Marcus signed the final documents today. He has no idea what he just signed, he was so out of it from this morning's dose that he could barely hold the pen. By this time next week, I'll have full legal control of Wellington Enterprises. And then we can dispose of our little problem in the basement." Emma's breath caught. Dispose of her? Victoria was planning to kill her. "No, I can't keep her alive," Victoria continued. "She's too much of a risk. Once I have the company secured, I'll make it look like she died trying to escape. A tragic accident. Everyone will believe it because they already think she's dead anyway. It'll just be a delayed discovery of remains." Emma didn't wait to hear more. She crawled through the vent system that night, moving through the house like a ghost. She'd mapped every duct, every opening over the past weeks. She knew the house layout better than Victoria realized. She found Victoria's home office and squeezed through the vent above it. Below her, she could see Victoria's computer was still on, open to an email. Emma had one chance. She dropped down from the vent as silently as possible, her heart hammering. Victoria was downstairs. Emma could hear the TV playing. She had maybe 5 minutes. Emma sat at the computer and opened Victoria's email. She composed a new message to Robert Chen, "Meeting at Volunteer Park tonight. Midnight. Bring evidence to police." Victoria planning to kill Emma within week. No more time. Emma. She hit send, then carefully deleted the sent message. She climbed back up into the vent and made her way back to the basement, her hands shaking the entire time. At 11:30 p.m., Emma executed the most dangerous part of her plan. She picked the basement window lock and climbed out. If Victoria checked on her and found her gone, everything would be ruined. But Emma had no choice. She had to meet Robert. She had to make sure the evidence got to the right people. She ran through the dark Seattle streets, her lungs burning, finally reaching Volunteer Park at 11:55 p.m. The park was empty, dark, frightening. Emma hid behind a tree, waiting. At exactly midnight, Robert appeared, but he wasn't alone. Behind him was a police car, lights off. Emma stepped out from behind the tree. "Emma," Robert said, relief flooding his face. "Thank God. When I got your email, He gestured to the police car. "I brought Detective Sarah Morrison. She's with the Special Victims Unit. I've already given her everything, all the evidence you forwarded me. But she needs to hear it from you." A woman stepped out of the police car, tall, with kind eyes and an expression that said she'd seen too much suffering in her career. "Emma Wellington," she said softly. "We've been looking for you for 3 months. Your case has been ongoing, but we had no leads. No one suspected Victoria because she seemed so devastated by your loss." Emma's words tumbled out, everything about the kidnapping, the fake death, the poison, Victoria's plan to take over the company. Detective Morrison recorded everything on her phone, her expression growing darker with each revelation. "We need to catch her in the act," the detective said. "The evidence Robert provided is damning, but with lawyers as expensive as Victoria can afford, she might still find a way out unless we catch her red-handed." "She's poisoning my father," Emma said urgently. "Every day. She makes him tea. Can you test it?" Detective Morrison nodded. "We can, but we need to do this carefully. Emma, I need you to go back one more time. I know it's terrifying, but..." "I'll do it," Emma said without hesitation. "For my dad, I'll do anything." The plan was set. Emma would return to the basement. Tomorrow morning, when Victoria made her daily visit to Marcus's mansion to prepare his breakfast, the police would be there, waiting. Emma made it back to the basement just as the first light of dawn broke. Her entire body ached, her mind was exhausted, but she was so close. So close to ending this nightmare. At 8 a.m. the next morning, Victoria left to go to Marcus's mansion as she did every day. Emma listened through the vent as the house fell silent. At Marcus's mansion, Detective Morrison and her team were already in position, hidden throughout the house. Marcus himself had been briefed in the middle of the night. Robert had gone to him with everything, and Marcus, though barely able to process the shock that his daughter was alive, had immediately cooperated. The doorbell camera captured Victoria entering with her key, walking into the kitchen, and preparing Marcus's morning tea. The hidden cameras caught every moment as she pulled a small vial from her purse and added drops to the tea, stirring carefully. "Marcus," she. 2:12 p.m. called out sweetly. "Breakfast is ready." Marcus appeared in the doorway, but his eyes were different. Instead of the glazed, confused look Victoria was used to, they were clear, sharp, and filled with a fury Victoria had never seen before. "Hello, Victoria," he said quietly. Victoria's smile faltered. "Marcus? Are you feeling better today?" "Better?" Marcus's voice was cold. "Yes, Victoria. I'm feeling much better. Probably because I stopped drinking your poison tea 3 days ago." Victoria's face went white. "What are you?" "I know everything," Marcus said. "About Emma. About the fake death. About the company. About your plan to kill my daughter." His voice broke on the last words. "My own sister." Victoria's composure shattered. She grabbed a knife from the kitchen counter. "You can't prove anything. It's my word against." "Against video evidence?" Detective Morrison stepped out from the adjoining room, her badge held high. "Against recorded confessions? Against the testimony of your accomplice who turned state's evidence? Against the literal poison tea you just prepared on hidden camera? Victoria Wellington, you're under arrest for kidnapping, attempted murder, fraud, and conspiracy." 3 officers moved in simultaneously. Victoria tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. As the handcuffs clicked around her wrists, she screamed, "This was supposed to be mine. The company was supposed to be mine. I deserved it." "You deserve nothing," Marcus said, his voice shaking with emotion. "Where is she, Victoria? Where's my daughter?" Victoria laughed, a cold, broken sound. "Go find her yourself. If she's even still alive." Marcus looked like he might physically attack her, but Detective Morrison stepped between them. "We know where she is, Mr. Wellington. Officers are bringing her here right now." And it was true. At that very moment, officers were entering Victoria's secret house, heading down to the basement, where Emma waited. The basement door opened, and instead of Victoria, Emma saw a female police officer with tears in her eyes. "Emma? Emma Wellington?" Emma nodded, unable to speak. "Your daddy's waiting for you, sweetheart. Let's get you out of here." They wrapped Emma in a blanket and carried her up the stairs, out of the house, into the sunlight she hadn't felt on her face in so long. The police car drove her across the city, back to her real home, to the mansion she'd grown up in. When they pulled up to the gate, Emma saw her father standing on the front steps, his face a mask of barely contained emotion. The car door opened. Emma stepped out. And then she was running faster than she'd ever run in her life, straight into her father's arms. Marcus caught her and fell to his knees, holding her so tightly it almost hurt, his body racked with sobs. "Emma, baby, oh my God, Emma, you're real, you're alive, you're here." "Daddy," Emma cried into his shoulder, her own tears soaking his shirt. "Daddy, I'm home." They stayed like that for long minutes, crying, holding each other, both of them shaking with the relief of a nightmare finally ending. The police, the detectives, even Robert Chen who'd arrived separately, they all stood back, giving father and daughter this moment. "I thought I'd lost you," Marcus whispered. "I thought you were gone forever." "I came to see you," Emma said through her tears. "At the cemetery. I watched you cry, and it hurt so much, Daddy. I wanted to run to you, but I was so scared." Marcus pulled back just enough to look at his daughter's face, cupping it in his hands. "You're the bravest person I've ever known. The strongest. You survived, and you saved both of us." "We saved each other," Emma said, and smiled through her tears. Detective Morrison approached gently. "Mr. Wellington, we'll need Emma's formal statement, but it can wait a few days. For now, get her checked out by a doctor, let her rest, and just be together." Marcus nodded, unable to speak. He picked Emma up in his arms, carrying her like he used to when she was smaller, and walked her into their home. Emma's room was exactly as she'd left it. Her stuffed animals, her books, her drawings still hung on the walls. It was like stepping back in time, into a life that had been stolen and was now returned. That night, Marcus sat beside Emma's bed, holding her hand, refusing to leave even for a moment. "Daddy?" Emma said softly. "Yes, baby? It's really over, right? Victoria can't hurt us anymore?" Marcus squeezed her hand. "It's over. She'll never hurt anyone again. I promise you." Emma's eyes drifted closed, and for the first time in 3 months, she felt safe enough to truly sleep. And Marcus stayed beside her, watching over his daughter, silently thanking God for the miracle of getting her back. 3 months later, Seattle was buzzing with what the media called the Wellington betrayal, one of the most shocking family scandals in the city's history. Victoria's trial had been swift and brutal. The evidence was overwhelming, and even her expensive legal team couldn't save her from the weight of her crimes. She was sentenced to 40 years in prison for kidnapping, attempted murder, fraud, and conspiracy. Robert Chen, who had cooperated fully with authorities and shown genuine remorse, received a lighter sentence of 10 years with possibility of parole. Some called it mercy, others called it justice. But Marcus didn't care about the specifics. His sister was locked away where she could never hurt anyone again, and that was enough. The Wellington mansion had been transformed. Gone were the dark, heavy curtains that had draped every window during Marcus's months of grief. Now, sunlight poured through every room. Emma had insisted on it. "We lived in darkness long enough, Daddy," she'd said. "Now I want light. Lots and lots of light." Marcus had sold Victoria's penthouse and the secret house where Emma had been imprisoned. He couldn't bear the thought of those properties existing. The land was donated to the city for a new children's center, a place where kids who'd experienced trauma could find healing. Emma had suggested the name, the Hope House. On this particular Saturday morning, Marcus was making pancakes, Emma's favorite, when he heard her footsteps running down the stairs. "Daddy! Daddy! Look!" Emma burst into the kitchen, holding up her phone. She was 12 now, having had 2 birthdays since her rescue. She'd grown taller, healthier, and while the nightmares still came sometimes, they were growing less frequent. Therapy had helped. Time had helped. But mostly, having her father back, really back, not the poisoned, grief-stricken shell Victoria had created, had helped most of all. "What is it, Princess?" Marcus asked, flipping a pancake. "Mrs. Johnson's class invited me to speak at their school assembly. About resilience and surviving hard things." Emma's eyes shone with excitement. "Can I do it, Daddy? Please?" Marcus's first instinct was to protect her, to say no, to keep her sheltered from the world that had already hurt her so much. But he'd learned something important over the past months: Emma wasn't fragile. She was strong. Stronger than he'd ever imagined. "If you want to do it, then yes, Marcus said, pulling her into a hug. I'm so proud of you, Emma. Every single day. Emma squeezed him tight. These hugs, they still meant everything. Sometimes she'd just walk up to her father in the middle of the day and hug him, as if reminding herself he was real, he was here, he wasn't going anywhere. Marcus had changed too. He'd restructured Wellington Enterprises, bringing in new board members he actually trusted, people of integrity. He'd also stepped back from the CEO position, not because he was incompetent, but because he'd realized what truly mattered. He'd promoted a brilliant woman named Jennifer Lawson to CEO and taken a position as chairman of the board. This way, he could still guide the company but have time for what mattered most, his daughter. They spent weekends together now. They went to the movies. They took sailing lessons. Emma had been terrified of boats at first, but she'd insisted on facing that fear. They volunteered at the Hope House together, helping other children who'd survived trauma. And every Sunday morning, they made pancakes together, just like this. Daddy? Emma said, sitting at the kitchen counter with her plate of pancakes. Do you still go to the cemetery? Marcus had wondered when she'd ask this. Sometimes, he admitted. Not to the fake grave, we had that removed. But I go to the cemetery to think. To remember how close I came to losing you for real. It helps me appreciate every day we have together. Emma nodded, understanding. I want to go with you next time. I want to see the place where you cried for me. I know that sounds weird, but I want to understand all of it. It doesn't sound weird at all, Marcus said gently. We'll go together. They ate their pancakes in comfortable silence for a moment, then Emma spoke again. Dad? Do you ever think about Aunt Victoria? Marcus's jaw tightened. He'd been getting therapy too, working through the betrayal, the anger, the grief of losing his sister, not to death, but to her own evil choices. Sometimes, he admitted. She wrote me a letter from prison. The warden asked if I wanted to receive it. I said no. What do you think she wanted to say? Emma asked. Marcus shrugged. Maybe she wanted to apologize. Maybe she wanted to justify what she did. Maybe she just wanted attention. Honestly, Emma, I don't care anymore. She made her choices, and now she's living with the consequences. We get to make different choices. Emma nodded slowly. I'm glad I don't hate her, she said quietly. I mean, I'm angry about what she did, but I don't want to spend my life hating her. That would be like letting her keep me in that basement, you know? Marcus's eyes filled with tears. His 12-year-old daughter had more wisdom than most adults. You're absolutely right, baby girl. Hate would be another kind of prison. Besides, Emma said, her lips curving into a small smile, I have too many good things to focus on. Like the science fair next month, I'm building a model of the solar system with real LED lights for each planet. And like the father-daughter dance at school. You're still coming, right? I wouldn't miss it for the world, Marcus promised. Though I should warn you, I'm a terrible dancer. I know, Emma laughed. I've seen you at weddings. You dance like a robot. But you're my robot, so I don't care. They finished breakfast, and Emma ran upstairs to get ready for her Saturday art class. Marcus cleaned up the kitchen, finding joy in these simple, domestic moments. This was what Victoria had tried to steal, not just money or power, but these ordinary, precious days of father and daughter just being together. His phone rang. It was Detective Morrison. Mr. Wellington? I wanted to give you an update. Victoria's appeal was denied. The sentence stands. She'll be in prison for the full 40 years unless she demonstrates extraordinary circumstances for parole, which given her complete lack of remorse, seems unlikely. Thank you for letting me know, Marcus said. There's something else, the detective continued. Victoria's asking to see Emma. She says she wants to apologize in person. Marcus's grip on the phone tightened. Absolutely not. I didn't think so, but I had to ask. For what it's worth, Mr. Wellington, I've been in law enforcement for 20 years, and I've never seen a stronger kid than your daughter. Or a better father. What you two have, that bond, that's what beat Victoria in the end. That's what she could never understand or destroy. After they hung up, Marcus stood at the bottom of the stairs. He could hear Emma in her room, singing along to some pop song, off-key but enthusiastic. He thought about the gravestone he used to kneel before, weeping, believing his daughter was lost forever. He thought about Victoria's cold laughter, her poisoned tea, her cruel plan. He thought about Emma hiding behind that tree in the cemetery, watching him cry, torn apart by the desire to run to him and the fear of putting him in more danger. And then he thought about this moment, his daughter singing upstairs, safe, alive, healing. Making plans for the future. Choosing to live fully rather than being defined by her trauma. "Daddy!" Emma called from upstairs. "Can you help me pick out an outfit for my presentation?" "Coming." Marcus called back, taking the stairs 2 at a time. As he entered Emma's room and she held up 2 different shirts, asking his opinion, Marcus realized something profound. Victoria had tried to bury them both, Emma in a basement, Marcus in grief and poison. But they'd climbed out together. They'd fought their way back to the light. And now, every ordinary moment, every pancake breakfast, every school presentation, every argument about bedtime, every hug, every laugh, was a victory. Every day they spent together was proof that love was stronger than evil, that truth was more powerful than lies, and that family, real family, built on trust and devotion, could survive anything. "Dad? Earth to Dad?" Emma was waving her hand in front of his face, giggling. "You're zoning out again." Marcus smiled and pulled her into a hug. "Sorry, princess. I was just thinking about how lucky I am." "We're both lucky," Emma corrected, hugging him back. "We found our way back to each other." And as they stood there, father and daughter, survivors and warriors, Marcus knew that this right here, was what it meant to truly come home. To everyone who's been with us on this emotional journey, Emma and Marcus's story reminds us that even in the darkest moments, hope can survive. Love can overcome betrayal. And sometimes, the strongest people are the ones who've had to fight their way back from the edge. I want to hear from you. Have you ever faced a moment where you had to be stronger than you thought possible? Have you ever had to fight for someone you loved? Comment below and share your story. Your words might inspire someone else who's going through their own battle. And if this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Share this with someone who needs to hear a message of hope today. Because Emma's courage, Marcus's love, and their fight to find each other again, that's a reminder that no matter how dark it gets, we can always find our way back to the light. Until next time, keep fighting, keep hoping, and keep loving. You never know who might need your strength tomorrow. Blue Heart.